exactly right. First impression?
I was thinking like respect, like you handshake, it's kind of like, we know the person is important, it's just like, hey, what's up?
All right, there's another layer to this cake. Another layer to the cake is respect. Coming up to a person of importance and shaking their hand and introducing yourself. Very important. There's going to be information that we're going to provide you that also gives you information about how to introduce other people to people. So people from your team to Joe, and there's a process or a hierarchy about how you handle that. And so the more that you can become familiar with those kinds of little niceties, that adds some competence and some confidence on your side. So there's an old saying that go the extra mile, it's never crowded. If you will do your research, be a little prepared, get a little confidence, practice a little bit, it'll go a long way in helping that first connection with your client be the one you want, the one of them seeing you as confident, prepared, young professionals. And that incorporates a wide variety of things. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, because this is where he's going to step in with some more information.
Wow, what a great resource for the university to have somebody like Gene to be able to teach you those things. These are lessons that are going to last you for a lifetime. They truly are. They have so much. There are more things you're going to be able to take away from the things Gene shares with you today than anything I'm going to be able to tell you. I promise that. And again, these are less than lifetimes. They are simple things. They're things that you may almost think that you would take for granted, but they're so important, and they are in the business world incredibly even more important, and things that are messed up more often than not. That handshake, that immediate impression, it does mean so much. There are other things I know he's going to share with you today about business correspondence, just a number of skills that are the soft skills you know in business that, again, are so incredibly important. The things that there's been a study that I read recently that when you communicate, that a greater percentage of the communication that resonates with the other person is accomplished by those nonverbal skills that do than what you say. Imagine that from the presentations we make to you, 30% of it is going to come of what you walk away with is going to be from things that we tell you. 70% is going to be from the impression that's created non-verbally with body language, with handshakes, with these kinds of things too. The impression someone has of you is incredibly important. So what a great resource you have. And I'm going to stick around because I want to hear it too, because those are things that can always be brushed up on. I've had a long career in business, and I know I'm going to learn more from what I hear today as well. I am not a consultant. I have recently become a consultant. I've always been a consultant. All those things are true. Let me back up a little bit and tell you what that means. I like to consider myself today a retiree. I shouldn't have to do anything anymore. I think I am done and I'm ready to hit the beach, maybe for a short time and then straight into the retirement home, and I am done. I'm retired in my career. And so I do not like to consider myself a consultant. I owned a business that I started when I was fairly young. I was the president and CEO of that business for 30 years. The business was involved in marketing, communication, and branding. I ran that company for 30 years. I sold it a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and with the sale of that company, had the resources that if I never wanted to do anything again, never needed to earn another paycheck, I didn't have to do that. And I sat back and thought, I can do anything I want. What am I now? I'm a retiree. That feels good. I was able to retire before they carried me out feet first of my office, and that is a great experience. So I didn't, when I consider myself, when people say, Joe, what are you doing now? I say, I'm retired. And yet that's a lie. Almost within days of the announcement about the sale of my company and the retirement. There was an article about it in the business section of the local newspaper. The reporter asked, Joe, what are you going to do? You know, now that you're retired, you're a little young to completely put you out to pasture. What are you going to do next? And I said, I have absolutely no idea. I have no plan in mind. I said, I've spent my career in branding, marketing, communication strategy, all those things. I can't, that's a part of who I am. I can't help but be that. Maybe I'll spend some time doing some work with that for non-for-profits and donate my time doing that to not-for-profit organizations who can learn something, who need help in those areas. And I sat back in the paper, went to press, and within 2 weeks, 27 different not-for-profit organizations had called me and said, we read that article. People say, hey, nobody reads the newspaper anymore. Not only was this in the newspaper, the story, it started on the one page of the business section, it flipped over to have to go to the backstage to continue the story. That little paragraph was second paragraph from the end, at the end of the story on the back page, and still 27 people, different organizations found that and called and said, will you come and share some of your information with us? And I said, I'm happy to do it. It took me 6 months to get through all 27 of them, but I did spend time with all 27 of those organizations. And some of them I spent just a few hours with, helping them, saying, tell me what, you know, about your story, how you tell your story now, doing a little audit of their brand, you know, talking about their communication processes and going forward with that. So I was able to share some of the experiences that I had in a 30-year career, some of the expertise that I've gained along the way with them, and hopefully improve their lot by just a little bit. Along with that, some people said, we want more periods, we'd like a little more of your time than you've been able to give us in this short session. If we paid you some additional money, could we get more of your time and things like that? And at some point I said, well, if not, you know, let's see, what are the alternatives? I could take up golf, which I'm not really interested in. I can sit around and watch soap operas. I'm not too interested in that. And I can't lay on the beach all the time. So, yes, I will be happy to do that. And so in the last 3 years, I have started into an enterprise where people call me, they say, my company, my not-for-profit organization, my institution needs some help in the area in which you have expertise. Will you come in and help us a little bit? And I say, yes, I'll do that. And they sometimes say, we are happy to offer you X amount of money to be able to come in and do that. And spend a few weeks with us or a couple of months with us, give us some advice, you know, look at our situation, tell us how we can improve our situation. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been doing that for about 3 years. Somewhere along the line, somebody started saying, oh, well, this is Joe Ellsworth. He is our consultant. And I'm like, consultant? No, I'm a retired guy that's just coming in to help out. But that term started being used enough that I started realizing, I guess that's how I'm seen. I started to look up and do a little reading about what consultants exactly are. And I thought, yep, I guess I am one. Whether I realize it or not, whether I like it or not, I guess that's what I am. And then when I started thinking about it, I've always been a consultant. As I ran my company for 30 years, the reason that our company was able to stay in business for 30 years, the reason it had value at the end of the time in 30 years and I was able to sell the company was because we had clients and we were able to help our clients. With these clients, why did they hire us? It's because they had concerns in their business that they did not have the expertise to be able to do themselves. And really, I believe that that is probably the essence of why people hire consultants and the essence of what you do. I get hired as a consultant. My company that I formerly worked at got hired to be able to work with clients because we could bring in expertise that they either did not have internally, that maybe they had people with that particular expertise but didn't have the manpower at that time to devote to a particular project, or they just wanted a fresh perspective on what they were being able to do. And those three things are three of the primary reasons that people hire consultants. You bring an expertise that we do not have. There's an expertise that we may have internally, but we lack the manpower to devote to this particular project, and we would like you to come in on a short-term basis to be able to complete this project for us. And then there's another reason too. Sometimes that we would like an external perspective when everybody works in the same organization. Everybody starts seeing the company the same way. You start seeing your problems the same way, your challenges the same way, your customers the same way. We want somebody to take an outside look at us for this. And there's one other thing I found along the way too. Sometimes there are things they want you to be a catalyst for change that's going to cause cultural problems if they do it internally. What does that mean in practical terms? One of the consulting assignments I'm working, it sometimes means you're doing the dirty work. A consulting assignment, client that I have right now is a monastery, an order of nuns. There are 150 sweet little nuns that live together in a monastery situation who have vowed their lives to taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The head nun asked me to come in and help restructure the position of the nun because they do a few things. Mostly they're supported by donations. They have a few for-profit enterprises that they run on a little bakery, on a little gift shop, on some tours and rental of some of the facilities. They want to completely restructure that, and they knew coming in that they needed to fire some nuns. These sweet little old ladies. They're like 70 years old, and they've been doing this for years. And one's been running their little bakery, and one's been running their little gift shop. And they said, we need to change, we need a complete restructure if this is going to be successful at all. They've been there too long, they won't change the way they've been doing things. We need that change. They're not doing, we need to, and yet, even after they get, they're going to be living here with us and praying here with us and eating here with us every meal. And it's not going to be pretty. We can't fire them, Joe. So,
the axe man.
that's why next week I am restructuring the lives, the culture, and a monastery. It's a job that they probably could do themselves, but you can see why that would be a little awkward for them. And so they've asked someone from the outside to come in and be able to work on that project with them. And that's another reason sometimes to be able to go in and do the dirty work. But basically, the true reason that consultants are hired is to bring in an expertise, either an additional expertise or that new perspective that somebody from the outside can bring in. And that's what I do over and over again. And I've been doing that for clients since I started, not only in my consulting practice for the last couple of years, but for the company that I ran for all that 30 years before that. I'm telling you that not to tell you my life story. That's not very interesting today to be able to share that with you, but because it does relate very much to what you're about to embark on, the journey you're about to embark on with GAP. GAP is a great example and is an incredible introduction to be able to be a consultant. And again, remember, by my broader definition, some of you are saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't ever want to be a consultant. That's fine. Some of you are saying, I'm not even a business major, I don't want to be in business. That's fine. Some of you are saying, I am so far away from that, the project that I'm working on for GAP, the path that I'm going to follow in my life has nothing to do with this. Why do I need to get lessons? Why do I need to engage in a practical experience about being a consultant? And I promise you that even if you do not use that word, that throughout your careers, both here as students and particularly after you get out into whatever career path you follow, being a consultant is one of the hats that you will have to wear in every facet of every job you're going to. If you are in healthcare, if you are in physics, and I understand there's a physics-related project, that GAP project is going on this season. No matter what you're involved in, being a consultant and the process that you go through by being a consultant will become a part of your career. Just like I said, I didn't think that it was in running my business. We indeed were consultants, and you will be a consultant too, because even if you're not in business, you're going to be in the business of something. You could be in the business of healthcare, in the business of physics, in the business of whatever enterprise it is. Whatever you are in the business of that, and every person in the business of anything has to have a facet that is consulting, and you will be involved in that. GAP is going to be an incredible experience for that, because this may be for many of you your first experience of being able to be a consultant. Now you're thinking, I already said, you know, gosh, you're bringing in outside expertise. You know, I'm 21 years old, 21 years old, I'm a college student. I'm going to be working with companies, with business people. What expertise am I bringing to them that they don't have already? Well, first of all, you know, there is an incredible gift that you do have something you're blessed with that the people that you're responding to probably don't have. Your generation, almost everybody in your generation is more comfortable with online research than almost anybody in my generation. And very many times the economic buyers of what your service is going to be, of the project, the people that are going to sit when we Shark Tank you and you go in and do your final presentations to a company, these are oftentimes going to be guys in my generation that are those decision makers at the companies that you're going to be working with. You're going to be able to go in and find out things by bringing the perspective you bring by being an outsider, by being able to be as natively intelligent as online researchers you're going to be able to do yourselves. You're going to be able to bring them, you will be very valuable just because you represent that perspective. The baby boom generation was the greatest economic force in America and has been for decades because there were so many baby boomers. Populations dropped after that. The next huge boom is going to be the millennials that you are all part of. And the baby boomers do not know how to communicate with millennials. The fact that you millennials can communicate, know how you speak, know what influences you, know what motivates you, is a great gift. If you can package some of that in your eventual presentations, you're going to bring a great value as part of your consulting process. So the GAP project is going to teach you how to identify objectives. You're going to sit down in a very first meeting with your whoever you're going to be, what your group is. And I don't know the names of all the groups, I know a few of them, but whoever you can have your first meeting with whoever you're doing your project for. The first thing you need to do is clearly establish and have you both understand what the objectives for your project are. Understand what they're looking to get out of this GAP project, and understand and be able to clearly state what you can bring to it. Make sure there's alignment on what they're expecting from you and what you think you can hope to deliver. After that, there will be a process that you will follow. That's basically a problem-solving process. Everything you do will be aimed at achieving what that objective is. What do they hope to gain from this? What brings value to them? That's something you have to keep your mind on every step along the way, and every step you take is going to be solving that problem, finding out the information, being able to present the information clearly and concisely and succinctly in a way they understand it. You'll be able to, doing live presentations where you will be speaking to them in front of a room. You've got all the PowerPoint, keynote kind of presentation skills that you're going to be able to do, but being able to package your story, figure out how to solve their problem, how to package it, and how to tell that story to them and present that back to them so that by the end of your GAP project, the objective that you've stated at the beginning, everything you've done has gone to be able to achieve that objective. That skill is what you're going to learn in GAP. That is incredible. Everything you learn in classrooms, I think there's going to come a day when a GAP project should be part of a requirement for every student that comes through this university, because as an employer for years and a person that hired a number of people right out of college, we always thought that what you learned in the classroom, the history of your subject matter, the theory behind your subject matter, having studied your subject matter was all great. We needed that from each one of you. It was the students that had some practical, hands-on experience where they could take that classroom knowledge and apply it to a specific task at hand, where they could say, here's what we've learned, and I can now apply that to solve a particular business problem. Those were the people that rose above everybody else that we were interviewing for that particular job, and those are the people that we're going to get hired. You are going to have the chance to be able to do that. The skills that you learn in the GAP class, in your GAP project, are things you'll be able to apply to everything else. It's going to rise you above everyone else in the hiring process when you start looking for jobs. when you go into your first job, being able to address problem solving in this way is going to make you more valuable to the company. We used to say, when you hired a student fresh out of college into a job, you had to plan that it was going to take you somewhere between 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year before the person, you're going to be training them to take their education and turn it into practical knowledge that's going to be valuable enough for the company. So we were going to lose that person's first year salary because we were still going to be training them. With something like a GAP project, you know, that training time is cut down so much, you start contributing from day one. That makes you more valuable to a company. So this is a great step in your future career plan, and you're hired for what you want to do when you graduate. It's going to be a great experience. By the end of this, even if none of you ever wants to be a consultant, by the end of the GAP project, you will be a consultant. You'll know how to be a consultant, and you'll realize that that is at least one facet of everything you bring to whatever career you decide to go into. I'm excited to be coaching one team. I don't know, I've met 1 or 2 people that are going to be part of the team that I'm going to be coaching in this semester. So I'm really looking forward to it. We had a great time with the project I coached last time. But maybe the best thing about GAP that I heard from any student, this wasn't what was that I coached or mentored. But I talked to a math student, a young woman last year said, I'm a math major. She said, been good at math, was talented at math before I came into the University of Evansville, so I majored in math. And all the time I was in high school and all my years here, you know, I solved math problems. It's what I do, and we always solve for X. She said, I did my GAP project, and for the very first time, when I solved for X, I realized that what X was, when we had that answer, it could shape our pricing information for the company I was working for. It can shape the profitability or the loss of a company. It can shape market trends. I wasn't just solving for X anymore. In solving for X, I was solving a business problem, and by solving that problem, I was providing value to the company that I worked for. She said, once that dawned on me, she said, I realized I took my math major, and it made all the difference in the world. Congratulations for being able to take this step. It's not the easiest thing you're going to be able to do. It's not a project. It's not a class you can sleep through. It's not a class you can miss. It is a class where you're going to be given some basic guidelines and then doing a lot of things proactively. You've got a coach that's going to be just that, a coach that's going to help you, but if you want to get good at what you're going to want to do, what you bring to it on your own is going to be every bit as valuable as what your coach brings to you. And it's going to be a great ride. It's going to be a great adventure. And you've got courage by having signed up for this class. You really do, because it's not the easiest path you can go. But I promise you, get involved in your class, contribute to it, be a part of it, learn from it, and what you will be by the end of this semester in terms of being readiness for anything else you do in your life, you're going to be so much farther down the path than anybody who's not had this similar experience. I'm excited for you. I hope you have as great a time as the people that have been your predecessors in going through this, because I think almost everyone you can talk to in GAP has said it was stressful, it was hard, and I learned more about as much from it as anything I've learned in my experience here in school. That's about all I've got to say, all I know about, but I'm happy to answer any questions about that, and I'll hang around while Gene's presenting too so that I can learn from him, and we can just have this as open discussion as much as you want. I can answer questions now, I'll just be here to hang out. We can throw this back and forth later too.
Yeah, why don't we do a few questions right now while you're here. Do you guys have some questions for Mr. Ellsworth?
Yeah, I've heard that in a lot of consulting jobs, the work-life balance is really bad, and you're slaving. I mean, it's great that you were able to retire early, but did you basically spend your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s like working for people all day, pretty much, and then sleeping, and getting them to do all that?
I had a pretty cool work-life balance. I felt that, it can be, and now, I mean, there are times that things happen. I've got a client in Nashville, Tennessee. There's one of those clients that needs some hand-holding occasionally, and I've said, look, here's my cell phone number. I said, even after business hours, if you need me, call me. I'm there for you. You charge and make money for that. That's what being a retainer is on. It's being able to say, I will, when you're paying me this much money, you have the right to be able to call me when you want to. And still, there are times, if I'm not going to pick somebody up at 11 o'clock at night when I'm asleep and pick up the phone, and nobody's really going to call you then. But
You're on call.
But you
You're
kind of on
at the
call.
office.
But yeah. Consultants are a funny thing, I don't think there's any degree anywhere in being called a consultant. There's no licensure for that. You don't have to go to, a license or have a consultant's license to be able to do that. Consultants can be in any discipline. My particular background is in marketing, branding, communications, those kind of things. But somebody else can be a consultant on, to any kind of industry that you can imagine. So there's no one way to do it. There are consultants that work in a firm, that work in a larger firm, of other consultants too, and it is more of a, get to work in a 9 to 5 kind of thing. There are a lot of consultants that work at home. I just finished a book called $1 Million Consulting by a guy that is a world-renowned consultant who's, for the last 30 years has made, 7 figures a year, every year for the last 30 years, has never had an office, has never had an employee. He's got somebody that helps him with his bookkeeping. With that kind of income, he probably should. And he said, and the work-life balance is, here's what I do, and he said, for some clients, for a value added on what I'm doing, I can put you on retainer, so you can call me on a Saturday afternoon if you want to, and I will spend a few minutes on the phone with you. If you're ready to hang yourself over a business problem and want my assistance, you can do that. But with what I've done in my work balance, I've worked hard. I won't say I never worked weekends, because I did. I won't say I never worked holidays, because I did sometimes. With my company, we had times we would do a product launch in another country and have to travel and be gone for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks at a time and things like that. And then during that time, you're probably working a little bit all the time, but all of a sudden, you've also in those days got days off. And if you're doing a product launch in Paris, you might be in a big convention center for 6 straight days, 14 hours a day, but then you've got 3 days off and you can go around and walk along the sand and things like that for the other days too. So I consider that one of the benefits of the job. In my work, I figured I did my first international job in my early 30s, and with it, by 10 years later, I did a count when I realized I did it because my passport needed to be renewed. I've been to worked in 40 different countries in that 10 years. That can be hard. It can be, you can say you're out of life balance because I traveled that much. I considered it, a great privilege to be able to do that. So I liked it, but, I've also, I've had a good luck, though I've worked hard to be able to do that. I had a life balance. I've raised a family, and had outside interests and stayed in shape and things like that along the way too. So, I thought the work, one of the beautiful things about it, if you can discipline yourself by being a consultant, you can control your schedule more almost than anybody else working at even a more regular job even. So I think that's one of the great things. Being a consultant in retirement has suited my retirement pretty well. Somebody else?
One question. But which country did you like the most from all the traveling you did?
Oh gosh. Like them different for different reasons. Just this summer, and actually in association with the GAP project, I went to Israel. It seems like I always like the last place I went better than any place I've ever been. But that was, Israel is not a place I'm going to go back every year for my vacation, just to kick back and hit the beach and, try some foreign beers and things like that. But it was as one of the most eye-opening, fascinating places I've ever been in my life. It was on my bucket list. It's a place I'm really glad that I went. I was fascinated by it. I learned from it. I came back and felt like my whole world view was broadened by having spent the week and a half that I spent in Israel just this summer. The mountains in Switzerland were probably the prettiest place I've ever been in my life. I've been to so many different. That's like almost saying, what's your favorite song? They're like one for a certain mood, one for a different mood, and things like that. But but I like it all, and I saw a little thing that somebody put on the internet the other day, said I'd rather have a passport full of stamps than a house full of stuff, and I'm very much one of those people too, so I have a great appreciation for all the places I've ever been. Yeah, different favorites for different reasons, but yes, sir.
So how do you go about firing an individual, so like a business person versus a nun? What's the approach to that?
Firing a nun is going to be harder. Because just because you fire them doesn't mean they're not going to be a nun anymore. And again, they're so sweet and they're so sincere, and they're like working for poverty wages anyway and things like that, and they're trying their very best. So that's going to be, in firing the other place, sometimes it is a very natural occurrence. And you watch Seinfeld?
Yes.
Remember Norm, the kind of heavy guy at the bar? They always said in his company, they always let Norm do the firing because Norm was so emotionally involved with people. He would cry every time he had to fire somebody, and they said people ended up saying, "No, Norm, it's okay." They would pat him and say, "No, really," they said, "Don't feel so bad." So he was a great guy to fire people. And so I am not, that's something when you own a business. Mine was a small business. When I sold it, like a 50-employee business, so it wasn't so big that you still had to get emotionally involved with people. You knew every one of your employees, you knew them, so you were emotionally involved. Sometimes there was a business reason it just wasn't working out. I've tried to work with it every time and say, this is not the place where you are going to be happiest. Let's think about something else, and together, what can we do to find a path for you that's not this? Because this one is not working out, is not achieving the objectives that we had for it with you doing here. And really, if you think about it, it's not achieving your objectives either, or else it would be working better for both of us. A good job is working better for the employer and the employee. And so probably in finding, unless it was for somebody done something really boneheaded and you just walked in and fired them because you just, you were so ticked off at them and stuff like that, that's probably a whole different situation. But you try to find a place that ends up where both parties are going to be better because of this departure. That's really what's going to happen with the nuns too. I'm just saying, we would love to be able to use you in this and be able to use your expertise, but there's a lot of change coming. The objectives have changed. The processes that we've used that have gotten us to this point, we can stay at this level doing things the same way for years to come, but people don't want it to stay at the same levels. They want to take it here. In order for that to happen, there's going to be a lot of change that's going to have to take place. Are you willing to be part of that change? Can you be part of that change? Are you open-minded that? If so, we can use you in some capacity, but if you can't be open to that change, if you're going to be part of resistant to that change and put the parking brakes on this forward motion, then we've got to move in a different direction. We would love to be able to call on your expertise. We'd love to be able to have, I told the bakery, and I said, you know more about baking than anybody in this place is going to. The little gift shop nun knows more about the gift shop than anybody else. But the gift shop is going to change, and the bakery operation is going to change. If you can be part of that, and we can call on your expertise, we'd love to be able to incorporate you in some way in doing that. If we can't, then you need to know that this is a change that's going to be made, this change is coming. You can either be part of that, or you can choose not to be part of it, and we'll facilitate it either way. If you don't, we'll find something else for you to do that, we think where we can call on your skills, use them in a different way. So really, it's more of a, let's move you into a different role than say, you have to live out back in a hut or something.
Yeah.
Joe, can I ask you a practical question?
Sure.
What do you typically do before you meet with a client for the very first time?
I study their industry. I try to get an understanding of some aspects of where they've been, but this is complete because my role is in branding and marketing and communication. It kind of all boils down to some company or an organization telling their story to some other corporate audience. I typically, this seems like a little antithetical, but I intentionally do not look at their brochures. I don't go to their website. I don't do things because what I really want to find out is I ask them questions, and I do a minimal amount of research on the typical avenues that you choose to do research, because what I want to do is have them tell me their story and tell me what their objectives are. And after I understand that, I'll sit down with the CEO, I'll sit down with the chief marketing officer, with with whoever, with top salespeople in the organization. Who is your company? What do you do? Why do you exist? What makes you different from any other organization of its kind in the competitive landscape? Do you have a promise that you can make to somebody you work with? If you're a not-for-profit, or if you're University of Evansville, they say, when students are coming in, students have got a choice of hundreds of colleges, across the Midwest and across the country. What do you promise to a University of Evansville recruited student that is unique to you, that they can't find anywhere else? What's different about you? What do you promise them? Why should they believe you? I ask those questions of a number of different people in the organization. What I will then sometimes do too, as part of my research, I will say, who are your clients? Tell me who some of your clients are, and I will get the names of the people they call on, or who are your constituents. It's not always a client and not-for-profit. You might not call it a client, but a donor or something. Who donates to you? Who is your client? Who engages with you? Who are some of the people that don't engage with you that you wish did? And I'll go out and talk to them. Why do you work with, you donate money to XYZ not-for-profit organization. You chose the University of Evansville. You do good, you are a client of XYZ, company. Why? What do they do, for you? What do they bring to you that you can't do yourself? Why do you work with them? And then I go find somebody that works with the competition, somebody that didn't go to the University of Evansville, somebody that chose not to donate money to that organization. I'll ask them, why do you not, obviously you have chosen not to engage with this person, may I ask why? I try to get that information, and then I'll go back, after these first things, after I've answered questions, who are you, what do you do, what makes you different, what do you promise to people, why should they believe in you, what's the benefit to them if they do get engaged with you. After I find that out from the key people in the organization and their client base, and people they wish were their client base, then I'll start to look back for the first time. And that's after the first meeting, after I'm already engaged, I'll start to look back at their website and say, here's who it seems that, from listening to their story from all these different sources, here's who they seem to be. This is their brand position. Now I'll start to look at their website. I'll start to look at their printed information, their brochures and things like that. Does that reflect who they really seem to be? If not, there's a disconnection there, and that's the first project we need to work on. So that's what happens in very early stage of engagement. And the GAP project that we worked on with Jezreel last semester, that's kind of the process that we followed with that too.
I was going to ask, like those type of questions, asking that approach, is that something you'd recommend to us when going in and first meeting the clients? So I felt there might be a fine line between doing the minimal research and I don't want to show up unprepared. Is there some advice you'd kind of give?
I would start off everything trying to find out the objective. The first thing, even before I ask those other questions, I find out what is the objective. What is that you hope? You have chosen to invest your executive's time, and in some cases, executives' money, the company money, in engaging this GAP project. What do you hope to get from it? That would be the first. If there was one question I was going to ask, that would be the one question. After that, you can decide, it's almost case by case whether those other questions are part of that same initial meeting or whether that comes a little later in the process. That may be part of your initial meeting. There are times when it has been for me. There's times when it becomes a little bit more part of the process. But always start with the one question you definitely want to go with. If you asked about the objectives, and I've heard it asked different ways. I heard somebody say one time, going to the, what keeps you awake at night? There are different ways to be able to find that. What problems do you need to, my company would, if I could solve one big problem in my company or my organization, what would that be? And get those answers. That conversation can turn into, give a CEO that kind of question, a head of a department head, a product manager, something like that, and they're usually off and running, and you can gain a whole lot of information. The other questions, maybe follow-up questions, part of that first conversation, or maybe come a little later, you kind of have to engage that at that time, but that would be where I would start. Thank you. I'm still here, you know, it's just, you know, if, you know, any other thing or anything I can do, if you want to focus any questions to me later, we can do that too, but I'll just sit here and learn for the rest of it.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe, be sure to chime in. So if you see something that we're going over, or you have a point, I welcome your information. You're our additional perspective in the room today. Okay, what we're going to cover is, we're going to cover why do we need to have this kind of focus on how to behave as a consultant, and what are the appropriate behaviors, and what are the things that, you know, separate you from being a student to someone that's delivering professional value. Because that's really what's happening. You are going to deliver a professional value at a level that you've never done before. Who has done a GAP project before? Okay? So, you're the only one that's had previous experience in getting this accomplished, right? Anybody else?
We have
Gary
one more.
just stepped out.
Okay, he stepped out, all right. So 2. So we have 2 people that have been through it before. Was it a significant challenge to reach your goal?
Well, at first it was very broad. Well, it's, you know, we talked about the fuzzy. Well, when I first did my project, we talked about the fuzzy front end and how you should really try and not necessarily have a goal orientation. Like, you're not necessarily looking for, you're looking more for information than, oh, is this going to be, you know, what is this going to be in my presentation? And it happens pretty quickly where the fuzzy front end just kind of stops, and then you just really got to start developing the basic building blocks for what's going to be in your presentation. And it can be a little bit of an unsettling transition. It was for me a little bit, and it didn't help that there were some issues with my team, and my team imploded, and I got reassigned. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be what I would say, that it's just, you know, keep your mind open at first, but always remember that the crunch is going to happen, and it's going to come quickly, and you might not be the most prepared for it.
So, this is going to be kind of like your experience. You're the shopper in this huge place full of stuff, and you've got to try to keep your focus and make your choices, and you've got to be able to narrow down things to get to what you want. And so developing this focus is important, and that's what we're gonna work on. These are the things that you're going to be doing. You're going to be developing some skills to a level that you haven't done before. And it's going to push you in order to do that. But the employers, their expectation is that they get something at the end. So if we don't have the teamwork, the communication, the right consulting behaviors, you don't know how to manage a project, and you don't know how to handle the relationships and the finer points of things in order for them to help build that trust, because that's an important piece. The important piece is building trust and confidence from them to you, and from you, and I would say internally in your project team. Why is this important? Why is doing well at those tasks going to be important?
It's how you work effectively as a team to solve whatever issue it is that your client has.
That's right, that you're there to solve a specific problem, but you're also there to deliver something, and their expectation is that they're going to get value, and there's a lot at stake if it doesn't happen. What are some of the consequences of this project that you're undertaking? What can it do for you? Well, for one thing, you're an extension of the university. This could also lead to a job. It could lead to recommendations to graduate school, recommendations for jobs. It could lead to further consulting work. And you want to be able to leave with that, with your personal reputation intact, but also the GAP program's reputation and the university's reputation. We don't just produce students that are accountants. We produce leaders who do accounting. We actually had an employer who said that. I don't come to the University of Evansville to hire accountants or engineers or anything else. I hire the next generation of leadership in my company when I come to the University of Evansville. They may do engineering or accounting or whatever else that they do, but we come here to get leaders. And that's another big part of what this GAP project could do, is to help you move along in that area. And because there's more to being a leader than being in charge. It's making sure that something gets done no matter what. It's maybe taking a back seat because that nobody's filling that seat, and you can fill that seat and get it accomplished. So being a leader isn't always who's up front. It's who makes sure that we get across the finish line. And good impressions start with a whole series of baby steps. Because, you know, we want you, when you graduate, to have a handful of cash and to be able to have a good job or get a good graduate program that's going to accept you, either in a PhD or a master's level. But it's all about a series of baby steps. This handshaking. Where did handshaking come from? Joe?
I don't know if this is true or not. This is a story I've heard that hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the people wanted to show I'm not armed. I don't have a weapon.
Exactly.
I'm able to-
Get up, Dominic. Handshaking originally started like this. Look at what we're doing. We're grabbing forearms. And then it eventually worked its way down to handshakes. But what we were doing is, we were checking to see that old saying, what's up his sleeve? You ever heard that saying? Oh, he's got something up his sleeve? Yeah, well, he's hiding something? Well, that was very much a truism. And so that's how handshaking got started. And why was it the right hand? Why was it always the right hand? Because that's your weapon hand. Your left hand was your shield hand years ago in the Middle Ages. So you didn't have your weapon here, you had your weapon potentially here. And so that's how you knew that you were going to be on friendly terms, or at least neutral terms. We're going to talk a little bit about business email. We're going to do a quick assignment. We'll do it at the end. But this is probably the area in which the biggest minefield may exist for you, because you're not used to speaking to professionals. And some of you, honestly, I'm going to say, unfortunately, take shortcuts when you communicate to your faculty. But what's your full-time job right now? That's right, student. And so employers measure students from, do they attend class? Are they energetic? Do they have a good relationship with their supervisor? Who's their supervisor? Their instructor or their academic advisor. So those are things that when you're looking at recommendations, even for jobs, I wouldn't spend I'd spend some time on the internships or other things that I had, but I probably want to spend more time on making sure that I had a really strong faculty relationship, because that's really going to make a huge difference because they've got 4 years worth of history to see your perspective. Practice writing emails to your professors in professional ways. Always use the subject line. Make sure that you get your point across quickly. Most professors like a little heads up if they're going to have a meeting, so outline what needs to, what would like to go on in the meeting. And remember that this is a reciprocal relationship. So, you can't just say, well, I had a professor who was telling me about this yesterday, that somebody that they hadn't had in class for 2 years had slipped a recommendation form under their door when they were not there, and had a little sticky note on it that says, "I'll pick it up on Monday." So, what I'm going to
That
tell
probably
you,
wasn't going to be a good recommendation.
there's a real good chance that recommendation's in trouble. Okay? So, one of the things that I'm going to recommend is, this relationship is exactly like the relationship with your customers and your clients, is that you have to build it and work on it and develop it. So if you would happen to mess up and need a favor, that you could do that one-on-one. And I actually have a rule. If somebody, if I find out, or let's say a company contacts me about a reference, and someone has listed me as a reference but hasn't asked me, I don't provide that reference because they didn't ask me, because that's part of the etiquette and the rule process about it. And you can't just expect somebody to do a reference for you. You have to ask them. And you have to ask them, can they do a good one for you? So don't take shortcuts when it comes to any form of communication, and let email be formal. The other thing that you have, and Joe touched on it, this importance of your image. Okay? Actually, we got 3 really good visions of image. And Jill's going to stand up, and Joe's going to stand up. Okay, I am in the formalist of business attire. And if I was going to go interview, I'd probably, if I was going to interview at the University of Evansville, I would be wearing a purple tie. And so I'd be wearing a suit, polished shoes, matching belt, minimal jewelry, minimal cologne. This is, and if you all don't have a business suit, you need to go out and invest in one immediately, and not a sport jacket and slacks, which are nice. You need that too, but you need a suit, everybody, man, woman. So figure out how you're going to get a suit and start working on investing in one, because you're going to need it. And you don't want to have to scramble around when the time comes. So,
I'm not in a suit.
she is business casual. Okay?
Almost.
Well, no.
Because I've got jeans.
Well, you got jeans on,
But
okay?
button-
So
yeah,
she's got
well,
jeans on.
it's not buttoned down either.
That would be student uniform then.
Mm-hmm.
Most of you wear student uniform. Yeah, t-shirts, sweatpants, shorts, hats, t-shirts, no collars. You guys are in student uniforms. If you're in business casual, actually, see this? The new term is now smart casual. And Joe is smart casual. Look at that. He's got a nice blazer that is obviously matched with his outfit. He's got a bright colored shirt with a pattern. He has nice shoes. Everything matches. So he is kind of business professional, smart casual. And smart casual can go all the way. If she had
If I didn't have
khakis,
jeans on.
she had khakis and no jeans on, it'd be perfect, because she has closed-toed shoes. And those are the kinds of things that you need to be paying attention to. Also, you need to ask around to your coach and ask around to the people that may have talked to and worked with that company before, what are the expectations of our meetings? If we're going to be meeting them, what should we look like? Let's all make sure that we plan what we look like and how it's going to work. Because now, I don't think you all ought to go in matching outfits. But I think that you need to make sure that everyone is working together to look their best and to be appropriate. And don't underestimate this, because you can show up and you may have the best idea and it may save them millions or whatever, but if you don't look like that you can deliver on the project because of either your tone or your language, your body language, or your dress, those can be big impediments about moving forward. Joe, any comment on that?
I just don't, that has changed a little over the years. There were places in town that, particular major corporations, Meade Johnson was for years the biggest, Bristol Myers Squibb was the biggest and most formal and considered the best client you could have if you were working for anybody in Evansville. Years ago, you would not dare show up for a meeting at Meade Johnson unless you were dressed just like you're dressed today. Complete suit, blue or gray, a white shirt, and if you didn't have that, you could have been bringing the best value in the world that you weren't going to get, you just did not belong. That has relaxed these days. There are more places that will accept more dress the way I'm doing, in some places even the way, at Vectren, wearing what Jill is wearing plus khakis is what the top executive level of management at Vectren wears. Now, khakis and a sports shirt, things like that. However, because you don't necessarily know when you're going to that first meeting and creating that first impression, you will never fail by looking more formal than the expectation is. Even if you get there and you call on somebody that's dressed in khakis and a golf shirt, you are not going to not impress them by being dressed the way Gene is. So I would say always err on the side of going more professional than less.
And I could have worn my lavender or purple shirt, which I would normally do if it's a sore or other things on campus, but today I really wanted to get the difference in the impression of what a white shirt, and I'm not really a skinny tie guy, but they're starting to come in style, and my wife keeps me up on that whether I like it or not, and so I kind of went with that style this morning again on purpose, because those are the things that you're gonna see in the market. Yeah.
So if it's possible, would you suggest dressing better than the people you're meeting?
Well, I think you need to find out what their dress code is, and then I think you need to find out what their expectation of your dress code is. And then you always can be overdressed. It's much easier to be overdressed than underdressed.
And I would add two things to it. I think since you guys are coming in as students, it never hurts to be dressed just a little bit better. And one thing you might consider is for your first meeting, be dressed a little bit better, and then see what they're wearing and then sort of match after that. But those first impressions, as you said, can be important.
Even if they're not dressed as nicely as you are, they will appreciate the effort from you. And they know college students aren't wearing suits every day, but they will appreciate the fact that you made the effort, and their respect level for you will go up just a little bit just because you've taken the time to do that, and you want their respect level going up for you.
And you need a handful of positive markers from that company about building that trust and building the relationship. Those are really important pieces. And letting them catch you being intentionally thoughtful, that's a big deal. Make it happen. If you haven't invested in business thank you cards, go out and buy some business thank you cards now. You all need to be thinking about being able to use them and to be ready to go with them. If you haven't been to our office to get your resume or your CV ready and put together, you need to be doing so. It's going to be a part of the class, but that's also something that needs to work on. Yeah?
So I have an internship with St. Mary's right now.
Yeah.
I'm working with the CEO, and I cannot find, I have the hardest time trying to find business thank you cards appropriate that are like males. For females, I can find all kinds of buttery, flowery stuff, but for males, where can I find, like Hallmark, I have a hard time finding them. Dollar Tree, I have a hard time finding them. I can go to like the TJ Maxx line and Marshalls, because you never know. It's never the same place twice. So what would be the best place? Is there a website that I could go to?
Well,
Or-
actually, there's 3 easy places. One, the University Bookstore sells really nice, professional, high-grade business, or thank you cards. They're not cheap, but they're nice. And we use them in our office from time to time. I have found appropriate cards at Target before.
Okay.
And also Office Max, Staples, those are all places that you can go and they have business cards. Highly recommend that.
Do they come in like packets?
Yeah, they come in packets or box, yeah.
I saw some at Barnes and Noble, also they have some boxes that there were some that were a little bit less feminine oriented, because you're right, 90% of them seem to be a bit flowery. And
Yeah, because I mean, if I show up with the pink and blue one, it's just gonna get off the wrong impression, and I'm gonna be, this ain't gonna work out.
No, that's right. And I think that you need things that reflect your style, but you always need to remember to be on the conservative side.
Right.
Right. I mean, I found the same thing years ago when I was trying to get into my first job search, trying to find appropriate business cards. It wasn't always easy. So I went to the bookstore and just paid the extra money. Something else, make sure that your coach relationship that you have and with your faculty is strong through this process. Stay in touch with them. If there's any kind of email communication, make sure that you've got them in on the loop. And you want to make sure, the last bullet that I have on there, you don't throw people under the bus on your team. You're either going to float to the top and fire off like a rocket, or you're going to sink to the bottom and you're going to do so as a group. So you have an investment in those people, and you cannot throw folks under the bus. Yeah.
When do you give the thank you cards, like after an interview?
Well, you can give thank you cards at the end of lots of things. So let's say that you had your very first productive meeting with your team or with your client, and there's one person in particular that made all the arrangements, and one person in particular is going to be your lead person. So it's probably worth your team sending a thank you card signed by everybody to the person that made all the arrangements for the meeting and to the person that's going to be your lead to say thank you for all your work you did, and then thank you for the opportunity to deliver value to your organization. Yeah.
Well, going back to a point we talked about earlier regarding business emails.
Sure.
I want to get your opinion on this because I had a friend who had a terrible experience. The automatic signature you could put on there. Well, for instance, like Wade Mobley, this and the activities I'm involved in. A buddy of mine sent it to a contact he was trying to make just for networking purposes, and the guy grilled him saying how unprofessional that was, and I don't know, it just did not go over well. So I wanted to get your opinion on that.
I think that if you're going to use a signature line, which is fine, your signature line needs to be appropriate. And it needs to be not appropriate for you, it needs to be appropriate for who your audience is and who are you engaging. So this is one of the harder things that we have to do, is that we have to step away from, instead of focusing on us, we have to focus on who we're talking to and who that relationship is. And so, obviously, who they were talking to didn't find the fact that they were social chair of this or whatever that or this or that wasn't what they wanted to see or hear. So, probably a good question is to say, what, in your company and in your culture, what is appropriate?
Okay.
So, never be afraid to ask questions. And if you do make a mistake, for goodness sakes, own the mistake and say, what can I do so this doesn't happen again? And I want you to know how important our relationship is. So, those are two, they may sound simple things, but if you're sincere, it can really help things out. Now, I've got a series of handouts, and there's no way that we're going through all of them, but I am going to point out a couple, and then we're going to pass them out. This purple one is front and back, and it's a code of ethics for consultants. And the back are examples of unethical consulting behavior. Okay? I think this can be very helpful for you to look at. And again, I got it hole punched. If you all haven't got a notebook or a 3-ring binder, you should start one and start putting all your Yap stuff in your 3-ring binder. I know that you're probably going to have Google Docs and other things that you're going to be sharing, but sometimes you just need a 3-ring binder, old school. All right, Joe talked a little bit about this. Why an organization wants a consultant. And he went over some of the important things. Expertise, identify problems, supplement the staff, do the dirty work. Sometimes you're hired to teach people what they don't have. Create new businesses, generate new ideas, bring new life into the organization, influence other people. There are a variety of things, but I think that this would be helpful for you to see what roles that you might be taking as you move forward with your own GAP project. Then on the back, we went through the dress exercise. Smart, casual, business professional, interview attire, or the highest level, besides a tux. Okay.
You need that for funerals too.
Yeah, that's right. Well, when I wore this today, my wife said, "When did you start that second job at the funeral home?" I didn't. Okay. So another little piece of information. 1 week, I've dramatically improved my professional communication skills by removing 3 words from my email. So this is a very interesting little article about what a person said that these 3 words can negatively do, particularly when you're talking to your colleagues. The word actually, the word sorry, and the word me. And so I think it's a very interesting little read. I recommend that you do it. Also, there's information about presentations. And if there's one thing that you all are going to do is your presentation skills are going to go up dramatically. And I want you to take a look. At the very top is called the 10-20-30 rule. Anybody heard of that? No more than 10 slides, no more than 20 minutes long, and then the font should never be less than 30 font, so it's easy to read and you can get at everything. So there's some really nice presentation tips that are in here. Also some basic etiquette. When to shake hands, how to introduce people, and then information about going to networking meetings, particularly things like where there's going to be snacks and drinks and what you should do. Always remember that it's business first. Even though this might be your only afternoon meal, it's not the time for you to have a plate that's stacked up higher than your cup. A maximum of 2 of everything. Except if it was a piece of cheesecake. You need to kind of use your judgment, and everything is about small portions, small bites, and moderation, because you're there to engage with people, not to, rank their meatballs. Okay. So I want you to use this information to your benefit. Last. 30-second oral resume. We've talked about it before. Almost all of you have had some relationship with us in which we've talked about it to you. But you need a 30-second oral resume, or your elevator pitch, or however you want to call it, that is consultant-focused, not student-focused, not necessarily job-focused, unless it relates to their particular kind of industry. So you need to be able to switch gears and have more than one 30-second oral resume. Because when that company comes to find out about you and you shake hands and, it's tell me a little bit about yourself. It's tell me a little bit about yourself regarding what's going on now and with us. It is not about the rest of your life, unless part of that rest of your life is directly related to what's going on right now. So you've got to really practice. You need to write it down. You need to practice it in front of the mirror, practice it in front of your friends, so it becomes second nature to be able to do that. And even those of us that are chatty Cathys, I still practice. You know why I practice? So I don't say too much. Not if I'm going to say enough. And I think you're going to be surprised. It'll be about 50-50 in this room. 50% need to say more, 50% need to be careful about how much they say. So, practice, practice, practice when it comes to all of these activities. I kind of bristle a little bit when people call this stuff soft skills, because honestly, every quantitative skill that you have in the world, or professional business skill, if you don't have these skills to deliver it, it's not going to go anywhere. So you have to have this in order to get that other stuff understood and accepted. So just really work on all the little pieces, and hopefully this information will be beneficial to you. I'm not going to be between you and pizza, so I'm going to finish up, and we'll pass these out. Thank you for your time.
Maybe what we could do is set out the pizza, and then I would like to give an opportunity for questions.
Sure, go ahead.
As well, how about we put the pizza along the front here?
We can do that.
You guys can come and get some pizza. Can somebody grab the, yeah, you can turn that off.
I'm Dominic Bull, and I'll be working on the neuromarketing project.
I'm Carmen Rojas, and I think I'll be working on the GAGE program. I'm Mariana Marqui, and I'll be working on the Berry Plastic program.
I'm Nick RBC. I'll be working on the Berry Plastics.
I'm Song Song, or you can call me Sean. It's kind of hard to pronounce it. I'm working for Alternative Energies Project.
I'm Brandon Castellano, and I will be working on the Alternative Energies Project.
My name is Andrea Onion, and I'll be working on the Alternative Energies Project.
My name is Marketa Trusilova. I'm going to be working on the GAGE project.
My name is Maria Thomas, and I'll be working on the neuromarketing project.
My name is Sarah Llewellyn. I'll be working on the Alternative Energy Project.
I'm Garrett Johnson, and I'll be working on the GAGE project.
My name is Wade Mobley, and I'm between Berry Plastics and Cummins. Yes, please.
Okay, everybody all good. But it's interesting. Some of these projects are ongoing and some of them are new, and it's just amazing the breadth of projects from both the industry as well as internal, because I think that UE realized that there's definitely a benefit for that same energy that comes from us going out and talking to industry or nonprofits that the university itself could benefit from. So those of you that are starting the Alternative Energy Project, great. Good for you, and thanks. So let's talk a little bit about, we're going to go into a little bit more depth about the email communication. I gave you a little exercise. I suggest that we're going to do this exercise instead of individually, we're going to do it as a group. So kind of just team up. You two can work together, back table, three of you can work together, this table, and we're going to get this little quickie form. It essentially says you and your team are meeting with a client, and one of their leaders promises you some information. So you can get ready for the next meeting. It's been several days and you haven't heard from them. And so at 3 sentences or less, you need to prepare a response to that leader who's your client. Okay? So I want you to work together and let's come up with an answer. I bet we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think we've got that, right? I think you're all handouts. And I sent them to Jill, in a Word document. I don't know if I sent them to you in a Word document. Sure. Yeah, it is. Yes.
Let's go.
Let's get that.
Never know if you use.
So we write down?
Subject.
I'm assuming at this point there's gonna be Mr. Jim.
Yeah, it's a just
Or it's a doctor.
Mr. Bob.
Yeah, you can just call him Mr. Dog, Big Dog. Jack, are we talking to the big dog?
The team, to the team, and I would maybe the coach.
Right. So they had
I
they
think
need the information
Joe might.
by the next 10 days. Only 2 days was a lot. So they still have 8 days to get the info.
No.
Is that right? It seems like a really big pressing issue if they still make this.
But I think
Has it been,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 days after the 10-day period?
Opportunity to work with technical. Not saying that's all.
But I mean, like, depends on what the car is. The 2008 battery.
Oh, they got
No, no I, no sorry.
That's 2008. No, I think it's 7 years. Anyway, so, that, okay, I think I got it. So, they had a meeting. 2 days have gone by. And they have 8 more days to get the info. I would say
Mr. John Doe.
some,
We met at our last meeting.
Yeah, so let's say
At our last meeting.
let's say
We discussed, an exchange of information for, so days.
should we start this? Thank you for meeting with me.
Yeah, sorry.
Take one of the-
I think that'll start off on a positive note.
So that we can prepare for.
Joe's got a whole book written up there, he's ready to go. Okay, we're gonna give it one more minute.
We appreciate it.
They put one over the eggs. Yeah.
More information.
My teams are very excited. Looking forward to the project before any clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but I think we should. Move forward. So what are they right now? Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead, we're gonna jump in. And I want you to know that if for whatever reason we zero in on your response and may have some things to say about it, this is all in the name of learning and understanding and moving forward with our own knowledge. So, you know, what happens in the club stays in the club, and it's all for educational purposes. So, promise not to mash too hard, but at the same time, it's really important that we learn from this opportunity. So, Joe, what do you got for just to start off? Two.
Since we were having Papa John's Pizza, in real life, one of my actual clients was John Schnatter from Papa John's Pizza, and he was over the years one of my more challenging clients to work with. So this wouldn't be a very unusual circumstance for us. And so I approached it this way. To John Schnatter from Joe Ellsworth, I carbon copied the Vice President of Marketing. My subject line, I said, "You promised!" exclamation mark. Message, "Dude!" exclamation mark. 10 days ago, you promised to get me that info. Still haven't gotten it. If you want that project completed by our deadline, you can't hang me out to dry like this. What's the deal? Question mark.
Okay. Yeah. Now, this brings up a very interesting set of questions and dynamics. Either Joe has the best relationship imaginable with Papa John, or he just, you know, he just cut the mooring line loose on his boat and he is floating downstream. So that very well could be an appropriate email based upon their relationship.
There you go.
But, you know, that would not be my first approach, right? Jill's got her hand up. That is not your first approach.
Can I try mine?
Go ahead, you try yours. We want to hear yours.
So mine is just to generic Bob from Jill. I CC'd everyone in the company. The subject, "What is your problem?" And I start, "Hey, why haven't you gotten me the information you promised? I need it ASAP, bold, underline, Jill." So you think your professors and coaches are doing a good job?
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at their approaches.
Casual?
Okay.
Not the
They're
first
both
time.
they're both casual, and you all had a first meeting with people. You've talked about some information that you need to move forward. So you're really not at that point, are you? To have that level of informality. So,
Tear us apart. Tell us what's wrong.
Yeah, come on. We want to hear. So what else?
It's very direct, but also very vague. What information, what meeting? These people are busy people. They don't know who you are, probably, if it was just your first meeting. So, you know, explain a little bit more about who you are to remind them. And then say, what meeting? You know, like we included the date in ours to refer back to. And then specifically, what information are you looking forward to? Also a better introduction, better subject line, more professional.
Pretty much everything better.
Yeah.
And the whole company.
Okay. This is.
Remember we talked about failing fast and often?
Yeah. And
Go down in
I
flames.
think we've got some failing here, right? Yeah.
3 kinds of communication. There's warm communication, there's neutral communication, and then there's harsh communication. Right? So, we know what direction our first 2 examples went, and we've got some good things going on, talking about why they needed adjustments. Let's go back to the 2. Always make sure that it is Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever, unless they have given you explicit instructions to call them by their first name. So we want to be as formal as we can, and if they're a doctor, they earned a PhD, you should give them their credit for being a PhD. So that would be Dr. Gerhardt, Dr. Miller, Dr. whatever it would be. So make sure that this is as formal as we can make it with the knowledge that we have. And from, yeah, it probably needs to be from you, but you probably want to CC your teammates, and you want to CC your coach always. Never send a communication to your client that your coach isn't involved in. For one thing, what message does it send to the client if your coach is not involved?
That maybe you could be like behind the back, you're doing something that you did not inform your team about.
That's right, that could be one thing. Also, you might be saying that the input or the feedback or the advice or the support that you're getting from your coach is not worth them being involved in with your information. So you might be sending several negative messages in that process. So make sure everybody on the team is a part of the message. Okay, who knows what BCC is? All right, what's BCC?
Blind carbon copy.
Okay, so what's that mean?
Nobody else can see it but the person that's carbon copying.
That's right. So that could be as long as the person you're blind carbon copying know that that's what's happening and they're prepared, because you wouldn't want them generating an answer when that might not be appropriate. You want to keep somebody informed, but it's not necessarily they're in on the communication. But they may be directly or indirectly affected, and you can use BCC and people don't know that somebody else was brought into the conversation. It's a really good technique to use. Every time that I communicate with somebody where there may be ramifications, I pretty well always BCC my boss, so there's no question that sometimes I CC them depending on the situation. All right, the subject line. We have some great subject lines already. What would be some warm subject lines and some neutral subject lines? Because we got the harsh ones down. Yeah?
Regarding previous meeting information.
Okay, regarding previous meeting information. Warm or neutral? Okay, neutral. All right? What would take that to the harsh?
Missing?
Yeah, missing,
Information promised.
promised, waiting, any number of things, right? So, sometimes you're a word off from falling over the cliff, and neutral can be just fine. Oh, I'm going to recommend thinking in terms of warm. Warm startups. Warm sentences. Okay, great. Anybody else have another subject line?
Follow up.
Okay, follow up. Warm, neutral? Okay. Who has a warm one? What would a warm one look like? Yes.
I guess we have a warm one.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, we put it from the GAP team, just want to put all of our names and whatnot. We said Dr. or Mr. John Doe, thank you for meeting with us on August 16, 2005. We discussed in the meeting that more information would be forwarded to us before the August 26 meeting. Please let us know the status of the information. Thank you, GAP team.
Okay, all right. Direct. I'm probably, anybody call that warm?
Kind of lukewarm.
Started warm, but then it was neutral. What's the subject line?
Meeting information.
Meeting information, still neutral. Who's got a warm subject line? What about thank you for the productive meeting? And following up. So I'm not saying that that's what you have to use. I'm just saying let's think in terms of what's a warm greeting? What's a warm subject? So who's got some more some more text. You guys were working on your language. What'd you say?
We said, hello, Mr. Bob. We appreciate the fact that you are taking the initiative to schedule the next meeting. Will you please indicate for my team and I the specifications of the next meeting? We look forward to assisting you in your goal. Very respectfully, no.
Okay, all right. So you all kind of hinted and looked down the road about where you needed the information, but you didn't come out and say, hey, we need this information in order to meet the goal or the deadline, right? Okay. That would be sufficient, but more than likely, it's going to require another message. Okay? Yes? What do you all have?
Dear Mr. Smith, our next meeting is coming up, and I was hoping you would provide us with the necessary information to be prepared. Thank you very much.
Okay? Now, let's take a look at that one. Warm, neutral, harsh.
Can you repeat it one more time, please?
Sure, read it again.
Dear Mr. Smith, our next meeting is coming up, and I was hoping you could provide us with the necessary information to be prepared. Thank you for your time.
Okay? Yeah, it could be neutral or lukewarm, but we're placing a demand on them, are we not? So what's the demand?
Provide information.
Okay, to provide information. Okay? So, but you didn't tell them what kind of information. So I think this need to be more specific about what you need and when would be helpful. So it's okay to provide them with a deadline about what you need. You know, I've spoken with our coach, and we're looking forward to providing you a preview of the meeting by this date. You know, the information that we discussed would be critical for our preparation. We look forward to hearing from you by such and such a date. You can think in terms of going ahead and giving them what you need. Let them know what you need, but to do so in between, I would say, warm things. Thanking them, or expressing it was a pleasure to learn more about your team and your goals. We're really looking forward to delivering on this project. So ways in which there is some nicety going on in between where you need to be asking them for what you need. I'm going to encourage you to practice this kind of communication and sharing it with your coach. And then therefore you all can take a look, because you're going to probably run into these kinds of elements more than once, where you might be having to get information from somebody or need information, and you need to be able to do so in appropriate ways so that relationship is growing, as opposed to, you know, putting them off on the wrong foot. So you want to CC or BCC just the minimum people. Everybody in the company would be a difficult message. And then there would be, or from Joe's approach, where it's you know, more like a discussion between fraternity brothers than it is about a business activity. But that very well may be appropriate given their company culture or what his relationship is. Because what are one of the difficulties of having that kind of frank kind of communication? There could be some downsides. One of them is the Papa John guy may decide that he's going to send that message around to other people in his network, or other people in the company, and that may adversely affect Joe's relationship with other people, even though this was only directed at one person. But the impression of that, so that's one of the things about putting things that are even a slight bit harsh, that can leave an impression on other people And I have seen that happen numerous times, because you never know where that email is going to go. What's an alternative to get your message across to this person? Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and call. It's much easier. There's no paper trail. And you can, again, nothing prevents you from practicing what to say. Sometimes there's an administrative assistant that's involved, or some other administrative person that supports the process. You know, getting them involved can be helpful. And I'll tell you, there are certain college deans on our campus that I communicate to them, but I sure make sure that the administrative assistant has all that information, because they make sure that they're there on time, that everything, all the P's and Q's are together, because they've got a big job. So it's good to be able to use the working framework that you have.
With I've been working at a local business, and also intern this summer. And sometimes the paper trail is preferable, because they will come back and say, you know, we haven't heard from you. You know, you have the proof from the email saying on this date we emailed you this, and you can re-forward it to them. When would you suggest both calling and sending an email, and in what order? Would you call first or email first?
Well, you're bringing up, we're talking about apples and oranges, and having a paper trail in that kind of situation is important. We're talking about developing a relationship with a client in which that kind of paper trail, we want to, there's a fine line between covering your tracks and pointing the finger. And so that's where the phone comes in. So if you send a message, you send an email, you may even want to start, depending on the relationship, you may want to start on the phone. And then say, you know, I'm going to follow up with an email if that'll be all right with you. And then, again, the more communication that you have, the better. Joe?
This is a sincere question. It's a changing world. Is there a rule of thumb today about use of emoticons in business correspondence? Because I've started getting that, so I think this is, you know, particularly younger people and things like that. And I just,
well,
it strikes me as a little odd, but I realize I'm a dinosaur too. So.
Well, the answer is no. Those communications should be formal, and they shouldn't have those things. They shouldn't be taking shortcuts with punctuation. They shouldn't be. It shouldn't be an email text version with a U and you know, OMG and all these things. It's all that's not what we're about. It really does need to be formal, and so you need to remember what you're trying to do. Yeah.
So I ran into an emailing issue last week. I'm in the process of possibly doing analysis for hiring a new pediatric hospitalist for St. Mary's. And a doctor went up to the president, and that's who I do a lot of my business, or a lot of my internship with, is him. And he tells me to call me Keith, and he's a fraternity brother from USI, so he likes to joke around all the time. And in the email that I sent to Dr. Woodard, is her name, I addressed her as Dr. Wendy Woodard, her full name. But then, you know, I CC'd Keith, and in that email I said Mr. Jewell, but he tells me to always call him Keith, and everybody around calls him Keith. They don't call him by Mr. Jewell or Mr. Keith Jewell, they just say Keith, because that's how he likes to be called. So in the email, should I say just Keith, or Keith Jewell, or Mr. Jewell?
Well,
because he's the president and CEO, so, you know, would that be insulting to call him Keith? Or
what kind of feedback do you have, Joe? What's your notion?
Are you writing to the Dr. Woodard?
I was writing to the Dr. Woodard.
Primary correspondence, if the email is to Dr. Woodard, and that was, you were CCing Keith Jewell, I would still say for that, if you were, I'd go ahead, if he asked you to call Keith, in all correspondence directly to him, I'd use Keith. but when CCing him on something to somebody else, I would go with Keith, I would go with probably with Keith Jewell, just so that there's a complete list of that, so I'll call him by both names again.
Okay.
Jill?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, you know, it never hurts to be a little bit more formal, and particularly you're not sure necessarily what other people might be calling that person, so I would also err on the formal side.
If you receive an email with carbon copies, do you suggest using the reply all button or just sticking with replying straight to the main recipient?
I think that my perspective is what's in the message, the content itself, and the situation would direct whether or not we include everybody or not everybody. If everybody on the CC is involved in the message at some level, then we need to communicate to everybody. If not, and it's a courtesy, but I don't think that you can err by hitting reply all and communicating unless it just doesn't, those people aren't involved. Anything else? So we're bringing up really good questions. What is it that you have learned from us going over this exercise real quick? What things are you taking away for yourself?
How?
Both of you. Yeah. You all take turns over there.
It's not that easy how it seems. Like, I feel like we all know that it has to be business, there has to be some kind of introduction. But we could see that there's like so many little details that make a huge difference. So really, I think I learned to like, before actually sending an email or any kind of conversation, you really like have to think about it pretty much everywhere. Especially for me, because I'm an international, so all these prepositions, things, and comments, that is horrible for me, and that's my nightmare for 4 years already. But yeah, it's not. It seems easy, just like, okay, send a business email, thank you, you know, hi, or like, hello, good afternoon. But there's like way more into it than you would just think it is.
It is more complicated, and it can be rife with difficulties. I never send a message out that isn't reviewed by somebody else. Just almost every message that I send, even if it's 2 sentences, I have somebody else look it over. And if I send things out to go to groups of students, we have student workers that work in our office, I always have them read it first because I want the student perspective. And it helps me understand the best way to communicate that message from a student's eye and not mine. So, yes?
I agree with Marquetta, and also just that difference between the neutral and the warm. I think a lot of times in business I try to be so focused on getting the point across and being concise and consistent, and then sometimes you forget to be warm and cordial along with that. So I thought that was a very important point too.
That's terrific. Remember that you are in a constant mode of building trust and building relationship, because you want to leave a well-established and developed trail, so another student can come along in that trail with that company and everything be, you left the relationship better than it was before you got there. That's a really good way of thinking about what did we do to make that relationship better and focus on the client. Anybody else? What else have you learned? Yes?
Well, I was just going to say, I think this is a great refresher. I feel like my emails personally, I've gotten a little laxed. I have a really good relationship with all my professors, who I'm even on a first name basis with. While I won't do that in an email, it's still maybe not as professional as it should be. So I think this is a good reminder before going in and talking to professionals and new people.
Okay. There's a certain professor on campus that went by Dr. such and such, and I was here for 5 years before he told me it's okay to call him by his first name.
because I wasn't about to call him by his first name until he gave me permission to do so. So, you know, even, and I'm a director, you know, in a department, it's not like but it's just a matter of courtesy and, you know, manners and deferring to other people. That doesn't cost you anything. You're not out anything on that. And sometimes it'll come back and pay dividends for you.
The subject, how important that, well, I guess how your subject is worded. You don't want to put too many words in there, but you don't want to put too few where the person doesn't know what you're talking about.
Right. And then again, we want to make sure that it's also is not going to put them off. One of the things that happens at the beginning of almost every year is students start sending me messages and there's no subject line in it. And many times spam and other things come that way too. So really work on trying to use and get used to and familiar with using a subject line appropriately. That can be something very beneficial.
Can I add something on the subject line too? A lot of times if you have a long email chain that's been going, you know, back and forth about various things, people just have the reply, and it's, you know, the subject may be referring to something you were talking about a week ago. Make sure you update it to whatever it is that you're actually talking about.
And sometimes you don't need all that breadcrumb list to go to the next mail. So just cut it out. Just go through, cut it off. It's going to be there's a record of it. So, but it may actually defer or waste the other person's time or any number of things. So don't be afraid to go ahead and eliminate information that's really now superfluous.
Once you've been going back and forth for a long time, do you get to the point where you stop doing the introduction and the salutation and just, you know, cut to the chase because, like, still being polite, you know, with the message, but cut to the chase because for the sake of time, because I've seen a lot of professionals do that when they respond back to me.
Right, but that's a level of relationship that we're talking about, that we're building a layer at a time. And so yes, that over a period of time, I can go back and forth with Jill in a sentence or two. But if I want something from Jill or I need to explain something from Jill, I'm going to take a different approach, and I'm going to be warmer, work on making sure that the respect and the message is clear. Because sometimes you don't always know. You think that there may be a level of relationship, and it may not be the same for the other person. So that's where phone calls and other kinds of things can kind of help you sort of gauge that. Never be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to someone. As a matter of fact, do that more often, because for one thing, you've personalized the communication or the effort by calling them directly, and that makes a difference. So don't be afraid to use the phone. Yeah?
So for these phone calls, is there like any good timing to call them? Like, would they prefer rather like morning, lunchtime, rather afternoon?
Great question. So what's the only way to find out? Yeah, you got to ask them. You've got to ask them. Now, I know that sometimes, just through observation, I know when a certain person has their open times. And I'm familiar with them, and so I know what might be the best time to do that. But sometimes you just need to ask the administrative assistant, schedule a phone appointment. You know, I need 10 minutes of their time. Go ahead and schedule a phone meeting.
And if you haven't scheduled and you're calling, you can always say, you know, when you first talk with them, you know, is now a good time? Do you have a minute to talk now? Or, you know, should we set another time?
Right. And those are things, again, I encourage you to practice. If those aren't things that you're comfortable with. Joe, anything?
Just, you know, be cognizant of cultural things too. This is something I'm living in right now. I did not realize this. I'm doing a consulting project currently for a medical school in Nashville. The school was founded 100 years ago by Seventh-day Adventists. Seventh-day Adventists, I know that's a religion, I don't know much about them. I didn't realize that they are really hardcore on the observation of their Sabbath, which starts on Friday and Saturday. And I had been for a few weeks communicating, sending emails, and not getting responses on late Friday afternoon, and sometimes working on weekends without an awareness that Seventh-day Adventists do their Sabbath on that day. And they're happy to work with you on Sunday, but on Friday and Saturday, it's almost, and somebody finally pulled me aside and said, hey, I know you've been sending these things on these days, and you're probably not aware of our Sabbath practices, but we do not or will not communicate any business correspondence on those days. And I felt my face was a little red and a little embarrassed, but I did not know. Those are things, a little research on my part would have helped out. And shame on me for not having taken that step and recognized that, because it led to a moment of embarrassment for me and probably for them to have to correct me on it too.
This brings up another important point. You can be your first 2 steps toward down the consulting line, or you can be a seasoned professional, and there are still things to learn, and there are still things that, so your awareness and your learning is constant. It is not something that say, okay, well, I've reached a certain point and now everything's going to be fine. Well, no, it isn't, because there's so much change. And also, the culture of organizations are absolutely so different. You know, I think it's fascinating. He's talking about working with a monastery and all the things that, I mean, because now there's a culture you're not going to run across. They're both religious, but the Seventh-day Adventist process and the monastery with all the nuns. So there's you have to be kind of nimble and flexible and understand as a consultant about how to fit in and provide what they're asking you to do. One size fits one. It doesn't fit all.
And I was just telling you before we started the meeting today, my project the week after next is I'm going into maximum security prisons to do a project, and I don't want to do anything against the culture there because I might get stabbed. There's one thing to have your face get red because you did something wrong culturally. It's another thing to get stabbed. So I think I'm probably going to rush that before next week.
Please be careful. We want you to come back.
Okay. Anything else as we wrap up? Yeah.
Just regarding the overall communication, I'm a communication major and I'm even in touch with international orientation leaders. So, and I feel like with some of the projects we will be working with the international business people. So depending also like watch for the communication of the other person. If they're going to be like very laid back and comes to all the meetings and just jeans, you know, so then you can kind of get the idea, okay, do we still have to be super formal, or the person would actually prefer to be a little warmer? Because I know some cultures, let's say South America, they don't really like just the very formal, strict, you know, just like the business culture. Some other cultures, you know, they just strict. As moment as you would smile or something, they would even take it as a offense. Is that the word? Yeah.
Right.
So it is very important to like not just pay attention to our communication and like, oh, did I write this right, you know, or the proper form, but how is my client reacting to it and what's kind of their way to communicate with us, so we can get the better connection rather than just like strict form, you know, format of communication styles.
Absolutely. I think that we were taking the assumption that we were kind of dealing locally with things, but absolutely right. There's a great book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. And people have heard of it before. Okay, it's a great book to get some good information on how different cultures manage and organize business activities. What their take is on time, what their take is on tasks and dress and formality. And so it's a really good little book to keep. We've got one in our department that we refer to
numerous times. Well, this has been great. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to talk with you, but also about all the wonderful feedback and back and forth with very salient points. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So again, a big thank you to both Jean and Joe, and or I should say Mr. Wells and Mr. Ellsworth, back to your question. And let's, I know our schedule is, we were supposed to start something at 12:30, but let's go ahead and take a little 15-minute break, and we'll reconvene here at 12:45. All right?
So it was very interesting, and I'll tell you more, but I'll give a chance to other members of this panel to introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, my name is Busha and I'm a sophomore in electrical engineering. Last semester I was in the GAP team with Very Plastic, and what we had to do with Very Plastic was we had to study India and a specific we had to actually research through Euromonitor and decide which segments to go to, and so it's an exciting experiment. It's a confusing, extremely confusing experiment, especially at the beginning, but then at the end everything will be much clearer, and you would know what are you doing, what segments you support, and the reason. You'll become an expert in Euromonitor at the end of the day, and so you should enjoy it.
My name is John Hensel. I've done one other GAP project before. I'm a senior poli-sci major, and I was working with A.O. Smith. We commissioned a survey concerning some technology that they had. They had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I can't give the specifics as to what that technology was, but basically we were introduced to all the tools that we were going to use, Amazon Mechanical Turk and Qualtrics. Qualtrics is basically survey making, web browser, all-in-one software. And so you go on their website and you basically, it's kind of like, it's like Dreamweaver's to websites as Qualtrics is to surveys, and you pretty much just like design a survey without needing to actually go into all the mechanics of how the web page is going to work. And so we commissioned that survey about basically what are they going to do with this technology, and what is its potential. Because they had the technology and they were definitely looking at focusing on this area, but they wanted to know what people thought. And they linked to the survey from Qualtrics on Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is basically there are all these tasks that people can do remotely from their homes, and they get credited to an Amazon account, or you can cash it out once you have enough money. And basically you get a bunch of people to fill out a survey. You say that you're going to give them 50 cents if they complete the survey. And then, we just it didn't take very much time. They watched the video, and we basically all of our findings concerned that survey.
I'm Garrett Johnson, and this is my second time doing this. I work with Kids Die Casting Company. If you don't know who they are, don't worry, neither do I. But they do castings for steering wheels, transmission covers, and different things like that on the vehicle, and some other knickknacks and paddywhacks. What they had us do was very vague at the beginning. They told us to look at the market in Mexico. We asked them where. They said near our clients, and there was 4 locations where their clients were, and they just told us to look at everything. So we did look at everything. We included everything from oil prices down to coal prices, alternative energy, where to get the easiest routes to get their goods towards them, because they all use aluminum and steel, those type of things. And so they needed that very accessible. So we researched airports, and just anything you can think of. My advice, if there's something that you think that would be valuable to the project, do it. You can always delete it at a later time. Because there was something on our project that I wish we would included, I thought about it, but we got past that 50-minute point. They were only allowed 50 minutes for the presentation. So fortunately, we weren't able to put it in, but I encourage you to put in as much information as you can because it'll only be beneficial for them in the end. As far as this, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I feel free to, I didn't sign an NDA or anything like that, so I can openly talk about what we did. What I talked about with Hoover earlier, I wasn't able to talk about that because that was for Progressive Health here in Evansville. Their PT, OT, and speech therapy, private health company, and they supply all their employees to Deaconess Hospital and Orthopedic Associates, and they also supply for Nissan, Toyota, and Volkswagen. So I can't talk to you what I did with them, but with Gibbs, I can't talk to you about anything like that. It's very rewarding, and it did help me get my past 2 internships fairly easily, and they had no problem hiring me. So, you guys have any questions? For any of us?
Before we open it up to general questions, can I ask each of you guys to say what were some of the hardest things about your GAP project?
Sure. I think I will first start with first things first. The team is very important, so you guys are going to be spending with your team members all the time, so make sure the first couple of weeks you spend enough time to get to know each other and to identify the strengths and weaknesses of each person, because that's going to help a lot, especially at the end of the semester. That's when the things are getting really tough. So you'll be spending a lot of time. I see people over there on the 2nd floor balcony working on GAP projects all the time, at night, during the day. So make sure you have a solid team spirit, team morale, and then you'll be good to go with pretty much any task. And I think that's one of the things that we, my experience that I had. First GAP program that I was involved, we had a huge class working on the same sort of task. There were more than probably 11 or 12 of us. So we had 3 sub-teams within a team, and it was really hard to communicate. I think you won't have the same problem because the teams are smaller. But again, make sure you communicate well. I don't know, create a WhatsApp group so you can text to each other what's going on and keep everyone updated.
I think the same thing that Andrew said. Working on a project very classic, it will consume a lot of your time, and that's why you need to know your team members. You need to have a stable way of communicating, because every single day you'll be doing something for the project. Especially if you at the end, when the ending is approaching and you have to have a presentation. That's when you'll be staying up until 4 or 5 a.m. as a team and working on that. So trying to balance the project you have plus your classes, that would be something.
I would have to say the hardest part of what happened in my project with A.O. Smith was, well, the way it was set up, basically there is a group of about 9 people that started out in this class, and then we were split into 3 different groups, and each of the groups commissioned a survey independently about how they would best provide value to A.O. Smith. And there was a really big challenge. It was really frustrating to have to deal with my team for a certain point. Really, it was really difficult because we were writing up the questions and the videos, and it's all specifics, particulars, oh, it can't be this long, and you have the idea of what you want to do, and then there are all these constraints on it, and then you somehow get it to work. And it didn't help that the young man I was working with withdrew, and basically I was a lone wolf, and I got reassigned, and then my other team was better, and we just decided to take all of our ideas, and we commissioned 2 surveys on that team. And our team won the big competition or whatever, and Yeah, they cut more people because they figured they couldn't fly 4 people out to Milwaukee. But yeah, the 2 of my teammates flew to Milwaukee and they presented at A.O. Smith. And yeah, just
most difficult part for me was being an athlete while doing it. You guys will have a very, very tough time doing it. I wasn't able to meet with my group that much. And you know, if whenever we're doing this project, you have to make sure that you're not introverted. If you are an introvert, you need to stop and become an extrovert. Because communication is going to be the biggest thing. We all have separate lives. You know, we're not getting paid to do this. We're doing this just to learn, and it's hard to motivate people that I've found if you don't get paid. And from whenever I did it, my group was very introverted, and it was very hard to communicate with those because you get like 2-word answers. And it kind of discourages the other people to like do their work. If you're just like, hey, can you do this? And you're like, yeah, sure. Like there's no more information. So make sure you just have a very, very open line. And you know, if you are an athlete, really set aside the days that you have reserved, like the Tuesdays and Thursdays that we have here. Weekends are going to be very, very hard. And you know, that was the hardest thing that I found for my team. And you know, if you feel like there's not much communication, you know, get on to them at the same time. But then we also didn't have very good communication with Gibbs Die Casting because we asked them for information and we never got it. And I understand that they have their work lives, like they're just like, oh, they're a bunch of college students, we really don't need them kind of thing. But you know, at the same time, you're trying to give them a product that they can rely on. And you know, like Mr. Wells said earlier, there's a time for it where you need to be harsh and there's a time to be neutral. And I wish we were a little bit more harsh than neutral with some of the emails that we sent. And I understand you don't want to push their buttons because it'll be irritating. You don't want to be known as the annoying college student. But if you're trying to give them like what we were presenting them a multi-million-dollar project, and you know, in order to do our job successfully, they needed to give us more than what they ever did. But that, needless to say, they did give us a site tour. And we were able to look at different things. We were able to take pictures of some of their products, not all of it, because some of it is very, I guess, classified for them and the technique in that they use it. But just try and get on that one-on-one basis with your employer, to say.
And then before we open it up, I promise I will open it up to questions. So you guys have all talked about some of the challenges. Why don't you talk about some of the highlights? Talk about, you know, that. Go back to the point when you just finished your presentation. How was the feeling of that, and how has it helped you since then?
It was a long time ago. I think it was very relieving when we finished the presentation because it was like, yay, it's done. But also it was very useful to get some feedback because like I was involved in a consecutive project, so I took a GAP class in fall. This next spring I was also in the same GAP team, sort of working on the same goal. So it was really, for me, valuable to get all the feedback from all the executives, the professors, and then try to use that feedback in the spring semester to improve how I do things, how I present things. And people did notice some change, and that was very, very rewarding. Also, sort of like going back to advice, we've talked a lot about like team building and communication, but I want to just tell you a few things that you might like. They're more like mechanics of doing the project, but they might be very helpful. Most of you will probably be doing a lot of data gathering and analysis. Make sure it's just like it's a must, it's like put an exclamation mark. Make sure you organize it very well, because you will be presenting it later to the executives, and if they don't know like what is that like stuff in that folders and documents that you're giving them, they're not going to open it, and they will think that you're just like not very professional. Also, unlike college presentations, when you present to the executives, they don't want to like think too much. They just want the information right there. They want you to tell the story. So make sure it's clear, all the graphs are clear, all the handouts are like spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes are a no-no, big no-no, because executives, they're used to getting stuff that has been proofread by like 10 people before they receive documents, and they expect the same from you. So make sure you're like proofreading everything 20 times before you present or give something to the company, because you're not only like a part of UE or representing UE, but you're also representing yourself. So a lot of people who have been working on GAP projects, they got internships and full-time jobs. And those people were very, very rigorous about all the stuff that they did. So make sure you're doing your best, because, I mean, who knows, it might be a good opportunity for you to transition to a full-time job.
To go off of that, the writing centers with us, it's free, and they're all English majors. So, and they don't care how long your paper is. So those, I mean, I usually blocked off about 6 hours every week, where I would go in there and I would have it read over and over and over again to make sure it wasn't too simplified, but it wasn't too descriptive, and everything was spelled correctly.
And those, sorry to interrupt, those of you who are working on alternative energy or neuroscience, I don't know if, or neuromarketing, I don't know if Dr. Reeser or Dr. Becker has mentioned who you'll present to at the end. For alternative energy, it's likely that there's a good chance President Kazee would be there, as well as maybe Dr. Cullen, who's our Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs, and some university leaders. So the university leadership is going to be really interested in the things that you're developing and what you're learning and how that might be able to be carried further in the future. And the same would be true for the neuromarketing. So Don Jones, our Vice President of Marketing, will likely be there, as well as some other key leaders from the university.
When we presented our final presentation, and it was really an overwhelming moment for all my team members. And the difference between our team and the other team was that our presentation was more clear. As Andrea said, the graphs were clear, and there was something different that we did in our presentation that was unlike any other presentation that was presented to their university. And that's the main thing, is that to try to engage the company as much as we can, because every single day they see presentations on a daily basis. And if you can find a way of a storyline that can engage them, that would be the best. Going back to the Writing Center advice, I don't think that very classic can do that, because you'll be signing confidentiality. So your team members are the only ones who can proofread your writings. But at the end, it's rewarding at the end. With the lack of sleep and everything, but it's a moment that you will never forget in your life when you receive that feedback from them.
I just want to say, I've been to Bushra's presentation, her team presentation. It was really good. So if you guys are planning to present and you're not sure like what format to take, talk to Bushra, because they did a really good job. I was really impressed, and I think all the executives were very impressed as well.
Yeah, could you restate the question exactly?
Yeah, the question was, so we talked about some of the negative things. What were some of the high points?
So, I feel like there was something in there specifically about the presentation. And what
I
happened.
think I mentioned, how did it feel when you finally finished, and how has it helped you?
All right, so, well, once all the work's done, you have your big presentation, and then, your presentation's been scrutinized, and people have been like, oh, I don't like this slide, and, you change around the slides, and, get everything in the way, because it's like the presentation is the big tangible product that's going to come out of this experience, and it's just going to seem like a bunch of work at first, but it's just like it's the product that you're providing in its most tangible form. So it's like without your presentation, like regardless of what you've learned, there really isn't anything there for the client to see that you've learned anything and that you have added any value. So it's basically about once you get that fine-tuned and set up and everything's great with that, then, I mean, it kind of seemed like we did our presentation and then everybody was just like, oh, it's so great that GAP happened and we changed so much and we learned da-da-da-da. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I guess it's over now, kind of. But yeah, it seemed, it will pay off if you scrutinize the heck out of your presentation. If you got to make the best presentation that you possibly can. So I'm sure other people reinforce that enough. So.
I wish Brad was here because Brad Phillips was on my team. Which team is he on, the neuro?
He's on neuromarketing, yeah.
Have him do your PowerPoint. He was literally, I mean, it was the best PowerPoint I've ever seen. That, like, from a professional student, no matter, it was simply amazing, and I'm sure Dr. Griffin can possibly send it out.
Yeah, we can share that, and Mr. Ellsworth would even also say that the PowerPoint on that was really top notch.
And it was great working with him, and you guys are the neuro team, wherever you're at. You know, you guys are lucky to have him. And same thing with everybody else, like we're all lucky to have each other. We wouldn't be here if we weren't, because we ought to be recommended in some form or fashion. But that, you know, something that is really, really cool that I just want to highlight in general for all the teams, it doesn't matter what you're on, is, you know, we're creating $1 million idea, $1 million in real cash and real money, and it's kind of cool to think about. Some of the events in the past, you know, some of the projects have actually come to real life. I think one was with Alcoa, was it right? The bottle, I think it was. Were they on the bottle?
They had to do some things with the bottle, yeah.
Yeah, the screw top bottle, like we were part of that.
Like for beer?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the screw top beer bottles.
They were working, I can't
Yeah.
tell the details, but they were working on some of the strategic considerations of new products like that.
And, you know, I had a couple of friends that were on it, and they couldn't tell me until like after it came out, they were like, oh, we got to work on that. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because now it's worth like, you know, you go to a liquor store and they're worth $20 for an 8-pack. So, I mean, they made, I mean, that's a $1 million idea. And unfortunately, I can't say that about my product because my company had a very, very bad experience in South Korea, and they had to shut that down, so that cost them tens of millions. So they're very hesitant on going into Mexico. So it's a bummer for me to see all that effort that we did not come to life. But hopefully I will get in touch with them and try and push them a little bit more to do it. But highlights is where I just got done with a board of directors or board of trustees meeting with St. Mary's yesterday, and they had a proposing idea that's going to absolutely change the Evansville market. Can't tell you, but that's another cool thing. You can't like you'd be like, hey, I can't tell you what I'm doing, but it's awesome. So you can brag to your friends about it. But you know, it's something that's going to just having that knowledge of, you know, the presentation, and you know, you're going to be able to go to a board of a trustee meeting, people that decide whether or not to go on the project, and you can be confident in what you present and knowing that you're going to give a viable product that's going to make them money in the end, because that's mostly what they care about, is they want to make money. For, you know, for other majors that aren't business related, that's going to be the ultimate goal, is how do we make or save money, because that's what's going to raise the standard of living around here, and everything. But you know, whenever we went into our presentation, I didn't feel nervous. I can't speak for Brad. I don't know if he felt nervous or not, but my group was very confident in the product that we presented, and it was a very, instead of being all tense and relaxed whenever you have to go in for communications presentation, you know, you just kind of sit back, relax, and just talk. You can just have that conversation, a very professional conversation, but a conversation with the higher level people that are there to watch you.
All right, let's really open it up to questions now.
When you present, is it generally like everyone talks about every aspect that they were a part of, or is it like one person who's super good at talking kind of does it?
It depends. I mean, I think it's better to have a couple of people presenting from the team, those with the best presentation skills. But I feel that like as part of your question, assumed like that you will be working like on some part of the project, another person will be working on another part, and so like everyone will have a task to do. But the most vital thing for the project to be good and successful is to work together. Because if you don't know what other people are doing, probably something is wrong with the team.
Right.
Because if you will just present your part and another person will present his or her part and the third person will present that part, and then the executives will start asking you questions, that's where it's going to be really tough because you guys can like put everything together and come up with a good solutions for the company. So it's better like to have a few people presenting and everyone in the team should know everything about the project. So if, say, none of your team members would show up on the presentation, you can give the presentation yourself and answer all the questions.
I mean, for our presentation, there was 3 of us, I did the introduction, Brad did a little bit of the overview and background, and then Jessie, I forget Jessie's last name.
Foster.
Foster, Jessie Foster, she did the rest of the presentation. So we split it up 5, 10, and 35 minutes, and you really strictly have 50 minutes to do this presentation. So and that's how I think Mr. Greer, or Mr. Deere, I'm sorry, told us that, he was our coach at the time, and he was the one that told us how to split it up and everything. So it just depends on the coach and what your coach feels comfortable with,
Yeah, I think I would say more than anything, you're at the end of this process, when you're ready to present your findings, you're going to know your team better than any of us, any of the people on the other teams, and probably Dr. Griffin. So I would really, you want, this presentation is the product. You're providing a consulting service, and the presentation is the product that the client is going to look at. It's a tangible result, and so I think you need to look at that as like, how can I make that the best thing that it can possibly be? And you build all of your decisions around that. I'm pretty sure for our presentation we ended up having, well, we all stood up there, but one person did the entire presentation for the most part, and then when we fielded questions, everybody kind of chipped in and answered. So it's, know your team, know who's going to be able to present that presentation. Like if you have someone who's a particularly strong presenter, like this person was a communications major, like by all means, just do what you think is best. Have a discussion with your team.
There's no expectation from the class that everybody, the expectation is that everybody contribute equally, and that may mean that one person does the PowerPoint, the other person does the presenting. You divide your skills the way that you think is best. And sometimes the coaches will also make recommendations after that practice presentation for ways to restructure the presentation or have different people do different things.
I'm surprised no one is asking, do I need to know any special software to use or stuff like that? Because when I was joining the GAP team, I was told that we were going to do market research, so I was like, okay, so that's probably going to be a lot of Excel. I'm so good at Excel. Well, I found out that I wasn't really good at Excel, and there was a lot of things to learn. So my advice is to, especially for those teams who are doing a lot of data analysis, make sure you also have a solid foundation with tools that allow you to make data analysis. And be realistic when you assess your skills. So there's always room for improvement. And I would just advise all of you, most of you are business majors, make sure you know Excel very well. Shortcuts, not just I can type this thing here, copy with Control-C, Control-V. That's not enough. Make sure you know most of the Excel stuff, and it's very powerful to learn. So just spend some time, maybe in the beginning of the semester, later on.
How many business majors do we have here?
Yeah.
So maybe 1 or 2 on each team.
things like Google Docs and emailing helped the process or caused more confusion than meeting in person?
Google, we use Google Docs because our presentation is so large, and, you know, that's how we communicate. We also put our Word document on there, but it's totally up to you guys. I suggest that because it's more easier. That way, you know, and just kind of text everybody in your group or email, be like, hey, I'm working on the project, I'm working on this paragraph, so and so. Just have that online communication. That way there's not like 3 or 4 of you on there and everything's like shit down at the same time, and you say, oh crap, where'd that go? So you just have to just communicate and just say, hey, I'm gonna work on this tonight between this and this hour type thing, but it's totally up to you. But that's how we found that the easiest way to communicate with each other.
Yeah, Google Docs, like when I came here 5 years ago, Google Docs wasn't such a big thing as it is right now. So most of you probably have used it multiple times. It's very useful because, well, you can collaborate with people, and for like athletes, probably won't have time to like come here and like meet at the same time. I mean, like 2 of you can work from your rooms. Like if you're outside of the of campus, like traveling somewhere, you can still like work on the projects. So definitely do that. Plus, Dr. Griffin and other professors can also take a look at what documents you're working on and like keep the feedback right away, which is very useful. So that you don't like work in the wrong direction for like 2 weeks and then present it to your professor or like to executives and they say, oh wait, we didn't want this, we wanted actually like that outcome. And you have to redo everything over.
I would just add up from our experience, it's Google document becomes important to you at the end when you are preparing for the presentation, writing the documents. That's when everyone will have a part to edit, but it's important to be meeting at the same time. You can print out the Google document with you. The actual physical meeting is different. That's when you can actually produce something.
And if you have a chance, also do an on-site, like just on-site tour. Can't hurt to ask. If they say no, then it's like, okay, well, all right. But you really learn a lot about the company, and you learn about the products that they make if you do an on-site tour. And you know, most people or most companies are willing to do that if they know it's a project that is for them and that it's free too. So, any other questions?
Where is the presentation? Where did you guys present?
It's
Conference room.
Yeah, we usually try to have it in the Vectren Executive Boardroom. It's the nice room upstairs, yeah, right up there. It's got a big boardroom table. We haven't done it, sometimes we can't get it for all of the presentations, but we typically try to get that one, or there's a boardroom in the library, but with the construction that's going on in the library, I know that one's currently closed. But for the final presentations are typically here at UE. The project kickoffs, you typically go to your client site. For you guys, your client is also UE, so you're at UE the whole time.
It seems like you guys kind of talk about this as being like it takes all your time, like from your life. Is that for real?
You get things done that you need to get done, and then if you have time left over, then that's your time left over.
I can go out of the classroom if you guys want to get
I would say if you're an athlete, it will, definitely. Have fun. But if you're not, you have more time to like really think about everything. But if you meet regularly on those Tuesdays and Thursdays, we didn't have a problem doing that. We met sometimes on the weekends, but I know for my project, we didn't have to stay until 4 or 5 in the morning. I mean, it just depends on the personality. I guess it depends on the personality and the person.
It varies from project to project and team to team too.
Right. And it's, I mean, if they want something more analytical and more precise, you're obviously going to have to spend way more on the research and way more on the analysis. But it just depends on the client and how you work. If you're efficient, if you're not efficient, if you're a procrastinator, you know.
Also, will add to that is that comparing to like a normal class, it is not as leveled in terms of workload. So for me, the first like 3 weeks, we had a lot of free time, so we were just like being introduced to the company, being introduced to like other people on campus who can help us present and like do a lot of other things. But like closer to the final presentation, that's where it takes a lot of time. So make sure you do all your other homework and don't procrastinate with other stuff, because once it all piles up, it's going to be crazy. That's when you will be staying until 4 a.m. So you gotta like think ahead, way ahead.
It's like a math problem. You want to just take it step by step by step and just complete each step down the road. You don't want to complete it all at once, but you want to just complete one part, make sure it's all the way correct, and you want to complete the next part, make sure it's all the way correct. And then at the end, you compile all those steps and you get your full product, and you can still eliminate stuff that doesn't fit.
I think I will add one more thing to that. With our team, we had a good team dynamic, but still we, at minimum, when it becomes, after the first 3 weeks, that's when we started meeting at least like 4 or 5 times a week. And at least the minimum was at least for 2 hours. And so a lot, and also the weekend sometimes we would have to meet. Because working with Very Plus is extremely demanding, and they will be expecting from you a professional outcome at the end. And to be able to do that and to give them that outcome, you will have to sacrifice a lot of your time, but still you can have your life at the same time.
I was just gonna say, so looking back on it, is there anything you wish you would have known or should have done differently going into your projects?
I wish we put water. That was the only question in my presentation was like, where can you get water in Mexico? Because if you go down to Mexico, Americans can't drink it because our digestive system, it just doesn't work out. So you have to go down there and drink bottled water because it's filtered. And that was the only question that they had in our presentation that we did not deliver. That's why I said, you know, if you don't think it's necessary, still put it if there's time. Because darn it wasn't necessary. So, anybody else?
I'm not trying to bouncing off that water question, if they're going deeper in that, wouldn't it have been better to just invest in a filtration system instead of bottled water?
Well, our entire project, we included every form of transportation you can get, even bus lines. We informed any kind of energy that they could have had that we thought they would use, petroleum, natural gas, oil, where the closest oil rig was, where the closest port was, you name it, and that's, I mean, and you know, if you compile that, Jessie Foster had 35 minutes to give all that information and describe like where to get their minerals, where the closest mineral site was, how much it would cost to transport those. So it was very, very, very detailed. And you know, we didn't have enough time to do that. But that was some of the ideas that we had going into it, and we just had to eliminate that idea because it wasn't kind of on the priority list. Yeah.
There was an answer there.
Any other?
I had the same question like Ray.
All right, before we wrap up, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys very much. And also I'd like to give, if you guys are interested, Andre and Bushra, an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Social Innovation Club or the Changemaker Challenge. Do you want to mention anything?
Can we?
Yeah, sure.
So Bushra and I, we are sort of working on this club. It used to be operational a couple of years ago, one of the initiatives of the Institute for Global Enterprise, but still it's like a separate entity, student governed entity. So Social Innovation Club is basically working on projects, student-led projects that can help in the spheres of healthcare, education, or nonprofits, or anything. Environment, yeah, and anything else that can enhance the standards of living, either in the local community or global community. So currently we're establishing the framework to make sure that there are people who can fundraise funds from like corporations or like Kickstarter for other people to come join the club and work on their own projects. So if you guys are interested in like doing some project in like Guatemala or Kenya or I don't know, like a running project or something like that can help the community, you have a passion for it, come talk to me or Bushra and we can discuss sort of more how we can help you and tell you a bit more about the club. Bushra, do you want something? Yeah, we're going to be,
Just a bit of advice, use GoFundMe instead of Kickstarter.
Huh?
Use GoFundMe
GoFundMe?
instead of Kickstarter.
Okay.
Because if you don't reach your goal on Kickstarter, you're not getting any money.
Okay.
Yeah, GoFundMe, you'll get whatever you make. Yep.
Still working on all this stuff. So, if you guys have some experience you want to share, if you've been involved in like startups or projects, just come talk to us. It's going to be really helpful because we have a lot of things to work on. And so far it's only like me and Bushra who are like in charge of everything, a couple of other people which is doing small tasks.
And in the future, some of the projects that might take place in a social innovation club could make their way into GAP. So if there's a project that students have started and would like to have a GAP team address, we may be able to bring that into our GAP program. And along with the social innovation club, the institute.
Yeah, one of the other things that is being organized, maybe some of you have heard about it, Changemaker Challenge. That's a challenge for UE students, open for everyone, so you can sign up for a team and explain your idea to a board of judges, basically. And it is used for people, it's a very good source to spread the word about your idea on the one hand, and on the other hand to get some initial financing, because for the first place the team will get $2,000, for the second $1,000, for the third $500. So if you have some good idea and you need like help starting it, I think it's a good way to begin. So just sign up for the challenge, participate. It's going to take start on September the 8th. You'll be receiving a lot of help, talking to a lot of people from local community, business leaders, and then you'll be presenting your idea in October. So if you're interested, also you can talk to Bushra or me or Dr. Griffin or Cindy upstairs. A lot of people know about it, so if you're interested.
And the kickoff will be on September the 8th. I'll mention it again in class too. But the mayor will be coming for the kickoff, and Lynn Miller-Pease, who has worked with a lot of community organizations to hear what some of the concerns and issues are in the Evansville community. We'll be here to share some of that, and the theme is going to be Evansville Strong, Local to Global. So this particular Changemaker Challenge will focus on ideas that strengthen Evansville, or that take strengths from Evansville out into the world, or take strengths from the world back into Evansville. So, all right, well, again, thank you very much for spending your first Saturday here. I know that's a big sacrifice, and I really value your commitment. It will free you up to have more team time, like our panels here talked about, getting time with your team. So we'll be able to give you some of this time that you spent here today back for you to be able to use for your teams during the semester. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask us, or you can share the emails of the students, I'm sure. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend.
Let's just do
See, I use them a lot. I mean, I use my See ya.
I mean, you have a text. It's just like texting. It's it's just what you do right away. And we can keep up with international numbers. Okay, so far you're gonna shoot. Can we have lunch? I have
Tuesday lunch.
Like before our class?
Yeah, because I'm thinking like we have an idea and then
Thanks, man.
I mean, I'm talking about this. Me too. I'm free. Okay. Do we have enough time? Okay, yeah, we have time. Where will we eat? Like on campus? I don't know.
we can mix it up if we want.
We can go to Mana. Yes. Mark, can you do like Tuesday after 12? Yeah.
Alright, that's good. I'll see y'all. Alright, okay, we'll see you then.
Do you have any? Okay, we need two more. Do you have a marker you can spare?
How's it going?
What do you
Good, how are
want?
you doing, Hannah?
What are you doing here?
I'm in the.
Who's in the wrong group? Me or you?
What? The wrong group. You guys are clearly the wrong group. We don't want you.
Good, how are you doing? What are you up
Is
to?
it like a team thing? You're wearing red or?
Oh yeah. This was coordinated.
I would love to. I was gonna type you. I'll get back to you.
Hurry up. Yeah. Are we gonna do the shopping trip or not? Because I'm really really soon now.
Yes.
I have like, let me see what time I have tomorrow. Are you talking about today? Because I wasn't doing anything. I'm not doing anything. Today or tomorrow? I work at 5:45.
I wish I could.
Oh, okay.
That would make sense. I apparently work at 5:45. So I'm free for like what, 3 hours?
Are we just wait? Actually, wait.
I assume you're doing better. They was kind of scared. You know, that was an eventful trip. The venue was great. She's had this face.
Which one?
Just be the green one.
By the way.
It's driving down the state road and a car put in and then I have a really tried to get you. And so the front of my car is dying and it spun around here like this. So like
Like I see, I look at like there's some freshman, new freshman. Scarlet. That's too short.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, I'm still doing it.
Actually, there's a lot of pizza left.
Yes, I'm doing part time.
So I just find work.
So how's the gap program?
Guys, I just moved into a townhouse. I live in a couple of Yeah, they're incredible. I used to live in my parents' house. This is the polar opposite. Like,
How many times
it was
it's
amazing.
Quite fast, it's not
So
really
going
looking
into
at.
the little 16
I'll let you know.
It's now.
It's closer. You used to live in the
been here for like
apartment.
a
Closer,
year,
you live with
soccer, and I've been to like.
not the one where.
It's having like a kitchen.
Anybody need a sugar fix? There's
Are
two
you
donuts
doing
left.
Schrader?
Mhm.
Okay, good deal.
Donuts,
Are you liking
pizzas.
soccer?
I can't take it
College
home,
life so
so.
far?
I love it. It was very easy, like tough to adjust, but honestly, I love it. Roommate,
Yes.
teammate,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's really cool.
My family's here. They moved here.
I knew
Yeah.
soccer.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.